This first video is just a refresher of the linear cost functions. So let's get started. I'm going to look at just a few examples. The first example is an example of a variable cost. So in this example, it takes a half an hour to assemble a product. Direct labor is $20 an hour. So the direct labor per unit is $10. And when we write that as an equation, that is y equals 10x plus 0. And that's saying that the fixed cost portion is 0 and the variable cost portion is 10, and it will go up $10 for every unit that we make. So if we add some data to this, you can see that I've added the number of x's that we make from 0 to 1200. Whatever x is, that's our widget. I've taken and added a formula that just multiplies the number of x's by 10. If we come down and look at each of these, you can see that for these dollars, I'm taking 0 x's times 10, here's 100 x's times 10, all the way down to the bottom. Now what we're going to want to do is graph this and see how that graph looks. So I'm going to go up here to Insert. I want to select my data. I'm going to do just a line chart, and then let's tidy this up a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to select data. I'm going to edit the axis and tell it that I want these labels. Now I have those labels across the bottom. I'm going to change this title to variable cost. This is a strictly variable cost. And I'm going to change this axis so that the maximum is 20,000. Okay, so what do we know about this graph? It starts at the origin. If I make no widgets, my cost is 0, and it goes up in a linear fashion. In other words, it is a straight line, and the slope of that line is 10. Ready for another example? Let's go on and look at a fixed cost. So rent is $3,000 per month. Y equals 0x plus 3,000. The slope of our line is going to be 0. That means it's going to be a flat horizontal line. The fixed cost is 3,000. Let's add some data to this. You can see that it doesn't matter how many x's we make, how many widgets we make. The rent is going to be 3,000. The relevant range for this project is 0 to 1,200. We don't know if we can make more than 1,200 units without having to rent additional facilities. Let's add a graph. I'm going to select the data I want for the graph, click Insert, a line graph. We'll just choose a simple line graph. Let's go ahead and drag this over here a little bit more. Make it so that it says fixed cost. I want to change this axis so that my maximum is 20,000. That might be a little off the side of the screen. And I want to click on this line and say select data. And then for the horizontal axis labels, I'm going to say edit. And I'm going to choose from 0 to 1,200, just like we did before, and hit OK. So here's our graph. It's the same graph as we had before. Shall we compare these side by side for a moment? Okay, so here are just the two graphs side by side. Notice that they have the same dollar values on the y-axis and the same number of widgets on the x-axis. The fixed cost is a linear equation as well. It is a linear equation with a slope of 0. And the variable cost is a linear equation with an intercept of 0. That means that it has no fixed cost. Okay, what happens if we put these two together? Let's take a look. We have $10 labor per unit plus 3,000 in rent. That makes our equation y equals 10x plus 3,000. We can add some data to this again. There's our data. If we look at the formulas under the data now, you can see that I have 3,000 plus 10 times the number of widgets all the way down. So this is 3,000 plus 10 times 100 widgets, etc., all the way down. And remember, when your order of operations, we multiply and divide before we add and subtract. So 3,000 plus 10 times something, we'll do the multiplication before it adds. Let's graph this. Insert. I'm going to select my data. Line graph. Pick that line graph. This is mixed cost. We want to change this to be 20,000 again. I'm going to fix the x-axis by right-clicking somewhere in the middle of the graph and choosing Select Data. Edit the horizontal axis and then choosing my labels and OK. And there is our mixed cost. It has an intercept of 3,000 and a slope of 10. Let's look at all three of these graphs together. I may have to make them a little smaller to make that work. Okay, so there they are. You've got your fixed cost, has an intercept of 3, and it is a horizontal line. And then you have your variable cost, has an intercept of 0 and a slope of 10. And your mixed cost has an intercept of 3,000 and a slope of 10. So essentially, if we just took this line and moved it over to this graph, we would end up with the same graph as we have for mixed cost. This is just a quick review of linear cost functions.